Camila was the owner of a small cafe in a bustling city. Every day, she woke up early, prepared bread and pastries with care, and opened the doors of her shop. Despite struggling to keep the business running during difficult times, she never let go of her generosity. For her, helping others was more important than any profit. One cold morning, a man entered the cafe. He was disheveled, with torn clothes and a look of exhaustion on his face. The smell of fresh bread drew him inside, but he hesitated to ask for anything. He was visibly ashamed, and before he could turn around and leave, Camila approached him. "Hi, can I help you?" she asked with a gentle smile. The man lowered his eyes and replied with a trembling voice, "I have no money. I'm just really hungry." Without a second thought, Camila prepared a hot meal, along with coffee and bread. She placed everything on a table and asked him to sit down. He looked at her with teary eyes, unable to believe such kindness. While he ate, he struggled to hold back tears. "What's your name?" Camila asked as she cleaned the counter. "My name is Roberto," he replied timidly. "I wasn't always like this, you know. I had a normal life, but I lost everything: my job, my family, my dignity." Camila didn't judge him. Instead, she sat next to him and listened. She knew that everyone had a story, and that at some point, anyone might need help. Roberto left the cafe with a full stomach, but what touched him the most was how Camila treated him, with respect and dignity. Weeks passed, and Camila didn't see Roberto again. Life went on, and she continued working hard to keep the cafe open. Then one afternoon, as she was closing the register, someone walked through the door. To her surprise, it was Roberto, but he looked different. His hair was neatly trimmed, his clothes were clean, and he had a confident demeanor. "Camila," he began, "I'm back. And I'm here because I need to thank you in a special way." Camila was confused. "Thank me for what?" she asked. Roberto then shared his story. After receiving her help that day, he decided to seek support at a local shelter and try to rebuild his life. Over time, he found a simple job and gradually began to put his life back together. That meal had been the first step toward the transformation he so desperately needed. "I got a job at a major company, and now I'm in a position where I can give back what was given to me. I know you've been struggling to keep the cafe running, and I want to help." Camila looked at him, still not fully understanding. Roberto continued, "I'm no longer the lost man who walked in here that day. My company has been investing in small businesses and new entrepreneurs. I told them about you, and they want to partner with you. I'm offering the opportunity to expand your cafe to new locations in the city and, most importantly, provide jobs to people who are in the same situation I was in." Tears began to roll down Camila's face. She never imagined that her small act of kindness could lead to something so grand. It was as if all her hard work and faith in doing good had come back to her in a way she could never have predicted. In the months that followed, Camila's cafe transformed into a chain of coffee shops known not only for excellent coffee but also for its mission of helping people in vulnerable situations. Roberto became one of the main partners, and together they created programs to train and employ those who, like him, just needed a chance. Camila and Roberto's story spread across the city, inspiring others to do good. The simple gesture of giving food to a hungry stranger had changed both of their lives, and now it was changing the lives of many others. In the end, what began as an act of compassion became a legacy of hope and redemption, proving that sometimes the smallest gestures can trigger the greatest transformations. As the cafe chain grew, Camila and Roberto saw their lives and business thrive in ways they never imagined. The cafes became known not only for their delicious coffee and homemade products, but especially for their commitment to social inclusion and empowerment. With each new location opened, More people in vulnerable situations were hired, receiving not just job opportunities but also training and psychological support. With the growth of the business came new challenges. Managing multiple locations began to demand more time and effort than Camila was used to. She missed the simpler days when she spent hours behind the counter, knowing each customer by name and preparing dishes with her own hands. Despite all the success, she began to wonder if she was drifting away from the original purpose that had driven her to open the cafe. Roberto noticed Camila's restlessness and suggested they take some time to reflect. They decided to return to the city where it all began and revisit the first cafe. When they entered the small space, now decorated with photos and newspaper clippings telling their story, Camila was moved. That place had been the starting point for so many good things. She sat at one of the tables and closed her eyes, letting the memories wash over her. "I miss this, Roberto," she said. "Being closer to the people, living day to day with them." Roberto sat beside her. "I understand, Camila. Sometimes, in the midst of success, we forget why we started. But what we've built doesn't have to be sacrificed. We can go back to our roots and still continue expanding the impact we're making." Together, they came up with an idea. They decided to create a program called Roots, in which a portion of the profits from every new cafe would be dedicated to supporting local small businesses and social enterprises focused on transforming lives. They also developed a more collaborative management system, allowing each location to maintain the community essence, where employees and customers felt like part of a big family. With the new plan in motion, Camila found a balance between growing the business and maintaining the human connection she valued so much. She began spending more time at the first cafe, where she personally welcomed new employees and shared her story with customers. Roberto's life also changed in ways he never expected. One day, he received a letter that deeply moved him. It was from a man who, like him, had lived on the streets and, after finding a job at one of the cafes, managed to rebuild his life. He was now opening his own small business and wanted to thank Roberto for being his inspiration. That moment marked, for Roberto, the true purpose of everything he had achieved, giving people what was once offered to him, a new chance. As time passed, the legacy of Camila and Roberto continued to grow. They not only changed their own lives but created a movement of generosity and inclusion. Their story inspired books, documentaries, and social projects in various parts of the country. But the highlight of it all came at a special event, years later, when they were invited to receive a National Social Entrepreneurship Award. During her acceptance speech, Camila made sure to remind everyone that it all started with a simple meal for a stranger. "Sometimes," she said with tears in her eyes, "the biggest impacts begin with the smallest gestures. Never underestimate the power of a simple kindness. It can not only change someone else's life but completely transform the course of your own journey." The audience gave a standing ovation, moved by the story of perseverance and solidarity they had built. As she looked at Roberto and the people who were now part of her life, Camila felt a deep sense of gratitude. No matter how much the company grew, she would always remember that the most important thing was the human impact, the connection, and the hope. In the years that followed, Camila and Roberto continued expanding their work, forming partnerships with NGOs, governments, and other businesses to further extend the reach of their actions. The cafe that once began as a small refuge for those in need became a symbol of transformation for an entire generation. The story of Camila and Roberto showed that even in the simplest situations, there is immense potential to create profound change. And by choosing the path of compassion and empathy, we can all be the difference the world so desperately needs. The cafe continued to grow, and so did the impact of Camila and Roberto's work. The Roots program became a national example of social entrepreneurship, and other communities began replicating the model, creating support networks for people in vulnerable situations. Large companies were inspired by their actions, adopting more humane practices focused on social inclusion. The original cafe, which had been the starting point for all the transformation, became a historic landmark in the city. People from various parts of the country came to visit the establishment, not only for the excellent coffee and pastries, but also to learn about the story that started there. Camila, now more mature and serene, continued to greet customers with the same welcoming smile as always. She made sure to talk to everyone, listen to stories, and offer advice. It was her way of keeping the essence of what it all meant alive. Meanwhile, Roberto dedicated part of his time to mentoring programs. He visited shelters and recovery centers, sharing his own experience of overcoming hardships. Many of the men and women who heard his story saw in him an example that change was possible, no matter how difficult the current situation. His journey inspired hope in hearts that had once given up. During one of these visits, Roberto met a young man named Pedro. Pedro had lost his family and, with no prospects, ended up on the streets. His story reminded Roberto of his own, and this created an immediate connection. Roberto decided to give Pedro the same opportunity that Camila had given him years ago. With Camila's support, Pedro began working at one of the cafes, and over time, he rediscovered his value and purpose. Pedro's turnaround was so impactful that he became one of the managers of the cafe chain. Over time, he started leading new projects within the company, creating initiatives that not only offered employment but also education and emotional support for employees. Under his leadership, the support program expanded exponentially, impacting hundreds of lives. Camila, meanwhile, felt that the time had come to slow down a bit. She decided to hand over most of the cafe management to Roberto, Pedro, and a team of young leaders who had emerged over the years. However, she never fully stepped away. She continued to visit each cafe regularly, keeping the connection with employees and customers alive. Her heart was always present, even if the daily responsibilities were now in other hands. At an annual meeting of the cafe chain, where all the employees gathered to celebrate the year's achievements, Camila was invited to speak. She walked onto the stage and looked at the crowd, faces from different stories, cultures, and backgrounds, all united by a common cause. Her eyes filled with tears as she reflected on the journey that had begun with a simple meal for a man in need. When we offer that meal to someone in need, we have no idea of the impact that gesture might have, she said, her voice choked with emotion. We are here today because we chose to see the value in every human being, regardless of their circumstances. We learned that true change starts with small acts of kindness and that when we plant seeds of love, the harvest can be extraordinary. At the end of the meeting, Roberto presented Camila with a commemorative plaque in honor of her vision and dedication. Engraved on it was the phrase, "Where there is compassion, there is transformation." Camila held the plaque with affection, knowing it represented not just the success of a business but the fulfillment of a much greater purpose. In the last few years, Camila and Roberto's legacy transcended time. What started as a simple cafe became a global movement of empathy, dignity, and redemption. Their story was told and retold in books, documentaries, and talks, always reminding people that when we choose to help others, we not only change their lives, we transform the course of our own journey. And so, the small cafe that began on a humble corner became a beacon of hope, lighting the way for those who are lost and showing that, in the end, kindness is the most powerful force in the world. The cafe continued to thrive, and with each passing year, the impact of Camila and Roberto's vision reached further and deeper into communities across the country. What started as a single act of kindness had blossomed into a vast network of social initiatives, all rooted in the simple belief that everyone deserves a chance to rebuild their lives. As more cafes opened, the Roots program evolved into something even bigger. Camila and Roberto began to partner with local schools, offering vocational training for young people from underprivileged backgrounds. The program not only taught them skills in hospitality and customer service, but also emphasized personal development, leadership, and community values. Graduates of the program often stayed on as employees, eventually moving into management positions or starting their own small businesses with the support of the cafe network. Pedro, who had once been a lost soul himself, became a key leader in these efforts. He spearheaded new projects that focused on outreach to homeless communities and those struggling with addiction. Under his guidance, the cafe started offering second chance employment programs, where people recovering from difficult circumstances could find stability, purpose, and support. Pedro's empathetic leadership style, born from his own experiences, made him a beloved figure among the staff and community. Camila, although more focused on mentorship and community engagement, continued to be the heart and soul of the enterprise. She never forgot the people who supported her in the early days, and she made it a point to visit each cafe regularly. These visits weren't just routine check-ins, they were opportunities for her to connect, to listen, and to remind everyone of the values that had built their success. As the years passed, the cafe network became a symbol of hope and resilience, not just in their city but nationwide. Journalists, social workers, and entrepreneurs from across the country came to study their model, eager to replicate the success in other regions. The story of Camila and Roberto was frequently featured in media outlets, and they were invited to speak at conferences and summits dedicated to social change. But with greater success came new challenges. The cafes became a target for large corporations looking to buy them out, offering tempting financial deals. For Camila, the idea of selling was never an option. She knew that the heart of what they had built couldn't be bought or sold. It was something intangible, something that grew out of love, compassion, and genuine human connection. One day, a major investor approached Camila with a particularly lucrative offer. The sum was more than enough to secure financial freedom for her, Roberto, and their entire team. But as Camila sat across from the investor, she realized that the proposal missed the point entirely. It wasn't about the money, it was about the people. Politely but firmly, Camila declined the offer. Instead, she proposed something different, a partnership that would allow them to expand their impact without losing the soul of what they had created. She suggested that any growth had to be aligned with their core mission, helping those who needed a second chance and creating spaces where everyone felt valued and respected. To her surprise, the investor agreed, impressed by Camila's unwavering dedication to her principles. The partnership resulted in a significant expansion of the Roots program, allowing them to set up community centers attached to each cafe. These centers provided free workshops on financial literacy, entrepreneurship, and mental health support. The idea was to equip people with the tools they needed not just to survive, but to thrive. The impact was profound, with countless lives transformed as people found the courage and resources to rebuild. Despite all the growth and recognition, Camila always returned to where it all started. The original cafe remained her favorite spot, a place where she could be close to her roots and reflect on how far they had come. On quiet afternoons, she would sit at the corner table by the window, sipping her coffee and watching the world go by, feeling a deep sense of contentment. One afternoon, while Camila was at the cafe, a familiar figure walked through the door. It was Roberto, now graying slightly at the temples but with the same warm smile. He sat down across from her, and they exchanged knowing glances. They didn't need words to express what they were feeling, the shared understanding that their journey had been extraordinary, filled with challenges, triumphs, and above all, purpose. Roberto reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "I have something for you," he said, sliding it across the table. Curious, Camila opened the envelope to find a handwritten letter. It was from a woman who had recently started working at one of their cafes. In the letter, she described how she had been on the brink of giving up, having lost everything, when she stumbled upon one of their locations. The kindness she received and the chance to work had given her a new sense of hope. The letter ended with the words, "Because of you, I have a future again." Tears welled up in Camila's eyes as she read the letter. She realized that the impact of their work was far greater than she ever imagined. It wasn't just about providing jobs or offering support. It was about restoring dignity, hope, and the belief that everyone, no matter how far they've fallen, deserves the chance to rise again. As the sun set outside the cafe, casting a golden glow through the windows, Camila and Roberto sat in silence, reflecting on the incredible journey they had shared. They knew that their work was far from over, that there were still so many lives to touch and so many opportunities to create. But in that moment, they allowed themselves to simply be present, grateful for the path that had brought them together and for the community that had grown out of a single act of kindness. The story of Camila and Roberto would continue to inspire for generations to come, a testament to the power of compassion, resilience, and the belief that even in the darkest of times, there is always light to be found when we choose to help one another. Years passed, and the cafe network continued to thrive, spreading far beyond what Camila and Roberto had ever imagined. The story of their humble beginnings became legendary, an inspiring tale of how one small act of kindness can ripple out to touch countless lives. One crisp autumn evening, as the golden leaves danced in the breeze, Camila decided to host a special gathering at the original cafe, the place where it all began. Invitations were sent out to friends, family, and all those who had been part of the journey. The small cafe, now beautifully restored, was filled with the warmth of laughter, music, and stories of transformation. As the evening light faded into a blanket of stars, Camila stood before the crowd, her heart full as she looked at the faces of those who had become her extended family. Roberto, Pedro, and others who had once been lost now stood proudly beside her, each a testament to the power of second chances. With a gentle smile, Camila began to speak. "When I opened this cafe all those years ago, I never imagined it would lead to this. I simply wanted to help someone in need. But what I've learned is that kindness is like a seed. When planted in good soil, it grows into something far beyond what we can see. Each of you here tonight has been part of that growth, and I'm so grateful for the love and hope we've all cultivated together." Tears glistened in the eyes of those gathered as Camila continued. "We've faced challenges, and we've seen darkness, but we've always chosen to lift each other up. This cafe, these walls, they're more than just a business. They're a reminder that no matter how small we may feel, no matter how tough life gets, there's always a light within us that can shine for others." As her words hung in the air, the cafe's doors opened, revealing a surprise. A new generation of employees who had joined the cafes through the Roots program, carrying candles that symbolized the hope and light that the business had brought to so many. One by one, they placed their candles on a table at the center of the room, creating a glowing circle of warmth that filled the cafe. In that moment, Camila realized that the legacy she and Roberto had built would live on, not just in the bricks and mortar of the cafes, but in the hearts of everyone who had been touched by their mission. It was a legacy of love, compassion, and the unwavering belief that even the smallest acts can create a world of difference. The evening ended with a dance beneath the stars, where young and old joined hands in a celebration of life, hope, and new beginnings. As Camila swayed to the gentle music, with Roberto at her side and the glow of candles reflecting in her eyes, she felt a profound peace settle over her. She knew that the journey they had walked together had come full circle, bringing with it more joy and purpose than she could have ever dreamed. As the last guests departed, Camila lingered for a moment in the quiet cafe, now bathed in moonlight. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes, grateful for every twist and turn that had brought her to this point. Life had taught her that true riches aren't found in wealth or success. They're found in the connections we make, in the lives we touch, and in the love we share. With a contented heart, Camila locked the doors of the cafe one last time that night, knowing that even as the sun set on this chapter, a new dawn awaited. For kindness, like a candle, may flicker, but it never truly fades. It passes from one heart to another, lighting the way for those willing to carry its flame. And so, the story of Camila and Roberto, born from a simple act of kindness, became a beacon of hope for all who seek a better world, reminding us that, no matter where we come from or what we've been through, we all have the power to make a difference, one act of love at a time. This beautiful conclusion leaves the reader with a sense of closure and fulfillment, emphasizing the lasting impact of kindness and the eternal legacy of love and compassion that Camila and Roberto created together. If this story touched your heart, remember, small acts of kindness can transform lives in ways you never imagined. Do you want more stories like this? Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another tale of love, redemption, and the unexpected twists life can bring. Share this story with someone who needs a message of hope. Together, we can spread more love, compassion, and inspiration throughout the world. See you in the next story.